Hi, and welcome to the channel. Here we share stories that touch the soul. Enjoy listening.
I didn't invite them because I missed them. That's the first lie people would tell about me, so let me correct it early. I invited them because Christmas makes liars sentimental, and sentiment loosens tongues better than whiskey. Also because my cardiologist said I should avoid stress, and I've always enjoyed proving professionals wrong. My name is Walter H. Callahan, 72 years old, American, self-made, inconveniently rich, and currently the proud owner of a heart that ticks like a bomb in a badly written spy movie. It could stop at any moment, which is precisely why I decided to host the most reckless Christmas dinner of my life. 5 former loves, 1 current fiancé, and 1 woman who absolutely, under no circumstances, was supposed to walk back into my house. The house, by the way, was behaving beautifully that evening. The kind of old Connecticut mansion that knows it's expensive but doesn't brag. Snow settled politely on the roof. Lights glowed warm and golden through tall windows. Inside, the smell of pine, roasted turkey, and money that's been around longer than most people. I stood in the living room with a glass of bourbon, watching the fire, practicing my smile. The charming one. The one that says, "I'm delighted you're here," while my brain whispers, "Let's see which of you will stab first." The first to arrive was Eleanor Price. Eleanor always arrives first. She believes punctuality is a moral virtue, and that everyone else is quietly failing life. She hadn't changed much. Same elegant posture, same silver-streaked hair cut in a way that suggested restraint and judgment. She kissed my cheek with the precision of a woman signing a contract. "Walter," she said, looking around the room. "This is festive. That's code for gaudy, isn't it?" I said. She smiled thinly. I was trying to be kind. Eleanor was my first wife. 23 years of marriage, followed by a divorce, so civilized we both felt cheated. She taught me discipline, how to wear a tie properly, and how silence can be weaponized. Behind her came Marianne Lowell, wrapped in red cashmere and unapologetic confidence. Marianne doesn't enter rooms. She claims them. "Well," she said, eyes flicking from Eleanor to me, "this is already fun." Marianne was not a wife. Marianne was a mistake that lasted 6 years and cost me a vineyard in Napa. Worth every penny, if I'm being honest. Then Susan Whitaker, gentle Susan, with her soft laugh and eyes that always seemed to be apologizing. Susan believed in love the way some people believe in weather forecasts, hopeful, even when proven wrong repeatedly. And then Vivian Cross arrived, late, dramatic, perfume first, person second. Vivian was ambition in heels. The woman who once told me she loved me and my future in the same sentence, without irony. For women. For versions of me, I'd been at different ages. Watching them greet each other was like observing polite wolves at a vegan convention. From the hallway, someone cleared her throat. "That's all of them," my assistant Daniel Reed said quietly. Daniel had worked for me for 12 years and knew every secret except the one currently tightening my chest more than the heart condition. He glanced at the door again, uneasy. "She's not here yet," I said. He nodded. "Do you want me to?" The doorbell rang. The sound cut through the room sharper than any argument ever had. For a moment, no one moved. The fire crackled. Somewhere, a clock ticked like it was enjoying the suspense. I set my glass down. "I'll get it." As I walked to the door, my mind did something treacherous. It remembered laughter in kitchens at midnight. Fingers tracing scars. A woman who didn't care about my money because she assumed I'd lose it someday. When I opened the door, Claire Morgan stood there. Claire, who was never supposed to see this house again. Claire, who left without taking a dime and somehow took more from me than anyone else. She looked older. Not in a bad way. In a real way. Snow dusted her coat. Her eyes met mine, steady, unreadable. "Merry Christmas, Walter," she said. Behind me, in the living room, the women turned as one. And for the first time that night, I felt my heart misbehave, not from fear, but from anticipation. Somewhere between the ornaments and the lies, Christmas had just become honest. Claire stepping inside felt less like an entrance and more like a power outage. The room dimmed, not physically, but socially. Conversations died mid-breath. Smiles froze and hardened, like porcelain left out in the cold. She took off her coat slowly, deliberately, as if she understood exactly what she was doing to the temperature of the room. Underneath, she wore a simple dark green dress. No diamonds. No announcement. Claire never competed. She let gravity do the work. "This is unexpected," Eleanor said first, because Eleanor always believed chaos should be addressed formally. Claire smiled at her, polite and distant. "That's generous. I was going for deeply inconvenient." Marian laughed too loudly. "Well, at least someone here has a sense of humor." Susan looked like she might cry. Vivian looked like she was calculating numbers in her head. Losses, mostly. And me? I felt like a man watching a past version of himself walk into the room and sit down uninvited. Claire, I said, as neutrally as I could manage. You remember everyone. I do, she said. Hard to forget a lineup like this. Daniel quietly handed her a glass of wine, already knowing what she preferred. That did not go unnoticed. Vivian's eyebrow lifted a millimeter. Marianne smirked. Dinner was announced shortly after, because nothing diffuses emotional explosives like forced etiquette. The dining room looked exactly as I planned it. Long table, white linen, candles low enough to flatter, not interrogate. Name cards placed with strategic cruelty. Eleanor beside Susan. Marianne across from Vivian. Claire at the far end, directly across from me. I told myself it was coincidence. My subconscious has always been a liar. As we sat, forks clinked. Someone complimented the tree. Someone else mentioned the weather. Americans are very good at pretending nothing is happening while everything is. So, Marianne said, slicing into her turkey with purpose. Walter, this guest list, is it nostalgia or masochism? Those aren't mutually exclusive, I said. Besides, Christmas is about togetherness. Vivian smiled sweetly. I thought it was about family. Tonight, I said, those are synonyms. Claire met my eyes. There was no accusation there. Just curiosity. That somehow hurt more. Halfway through the main course, Susan set her fork down. Can I ask something? She said softly. Everyone froze. Susan never asks unless she's already decided to regret it. Why now? She asked, looking at me. Why bring us all together now? That was the moment. The one I'd rehearsed. The truth dressed in a tuxedo of half-lies. I'm getting married, I said. Silence, thick and rich. Vivian was the first to react. Again, Marianne lifted her glass. Brave. Eleanor folded her napkin with unnecessary precision. To whom? I looked at the woman beside me. Lydia Bennett. 34. Smart. Stunning in a way that made men forget their own names. My fiancée. The only one at the table who hadn't known me when I was poorer, angrier, or less careful. Lydia smiled, composed. Hello. Claire's gaze shifted to her. Not hostile, not warm. Assessing. Like a doctor reading an x-ray. How lovely, Eleanor said. And how long have you known Walter? Long enough, Lydia replied. I felt Claire's eyes return to me. That quiet question again. Is it? Dessert came and went. Wine bottles emptied. Stories loosened. Marianne told one that ended with laughter and a glance at me that lingered too long. Vivian mentioned Paris and investments and how some people never appreciate what they have. Then Claire spoke. Walter once told me, she said casually, that the worst betrayal isn't cheating. It's rewriting the past so you look innocent. The table went still. I cleared my throat. I don't remember saying that. You wouldn't, she said. You were drunk. And honest. Lydia looked at me then, not angry, not afraid. Curious. That was worse. I think, Eleanor said carefully. This evening has had enough reflection. Not yet, Marianne said. I want to know why Claire is here. All eyes on me. Because I might be dying, I thought. Because I want the truth to bleed before I go. Because I don't trust love that hasn't been tested. Because, I said instead, Christmas deserves honesty. And she's very good at it. Claire raised her glass. I didn't know I'd been promoted. Later, when the others drifted into smaller conversations, Lydia excused herself. I found her in the library, standing by the window. You didn't tell me about her, she said. There are many things I didn't tell you. She turned. Do you love her? I opened my mouth and didn't answer. That was answer enough. In the other room, Claire laughed at something Daniel said. A real laugh. The kind that remembered me. And for the first time since the cardiologist's warning, I wondered if my heart wasn't failing. Maybe it was just waking up. I've always believed that houses remember things. Not in a haunted, chains and whispers way, but in the quieter manner of old dogs and former lovers. They keep impressions. Footsteps. Arguments that never finished. Laughter that thought it had time. That night, my house remembered everything at once. Lydia stayed in the library longer than necessary. When she finally returned to the living room, she carried herself the way people do when they've decided not to cry in public. I admired that about her, even as it carved something out of me. Claire had migrated to the piano. She wasn't playing, just touching the polished wood with her fingertips, as if greeting an old acquaintance. She'd never lived here, not officially, but she'd slept on the couch during a snowstorm once. The house remembered that too. Vivian noticed before anyone else. Vivian always notices power shifts. So, she said loudly, are we pretending this is normal? Because I'm out of practice. Normal is overrated, Marianne replied. Chaos has better stories. Eleanor sipped her tea. Chaos is simply lack of preparation. Claire looked over her shoulder. Then I apologize for arriving unprepared. I'm curious, Susan said, voice trembling but determined. Claire, why did you come? All eyes swung back to her. She straightened, calm in a way that made the rest of us look messy. Walter called, she said. He said it was important. That's all. Marian asked. That's never all with him. Claire replied, glancing at me. She wasn't wrong. Later, when the clock announced a time no one wanted to acknowledge, I suggested a walk. Snow had softened the world outside, muffling everything except breath and footsteps. Eleanor declined. Vivian invented a headache. Marian flirted with Daniel instead. Claire put on her coat without asking. We stepped into the cold together, silence between us familiar and heavy. The path through the garden was lit just enough to prevent lawsuits. You look thinner, she said. Doctors have hobbies too, I replied. She smiled. You always joke when you're scared. And you always notice, I said. Why are you really here, Claire? She stopped walking. Snow fell between us like punctuation. Because you sounded like a man saying goodbye, she said. And you never did that well. I sighed. The truth had a way of cornering me when she was around. My heart is failing, I said. Slowly. Unpredictably. Festive, really. She closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them, there were no tears. Claire never wasted emotion. And Lydia, she asked. I care about her, I said. That wasn't the question. I love her, I said. In the way men love futures. Not pasts. She nodded. You're afraid of me. Yes, I said. And of myself when I'm with you. Inside, unseen, Lydia watched us through the window. She didn't hear the words, but she read the body language fluently enough. From her angle, Claire reached for my arm. I didn't stop her. Back inside, tension waited like a cat pretending not to stare. I think, Eleanor announced, we should all get some rest. Bedrooms were assigned. Carefully, strategically. Claire's room was at the end of the hall. Lydia's was beside mine. I told myself it meant something. Sleep was theoretical. Around 2 in the morning, I heard footsteps. Soft, hesitant. I opened my door to find Lydia standing there, wrapped in a robe and doubt. Do you regret asking her here? She asked. Yes, I said. Do you regret asking me to marry you? That answer mattered more. No, I said. But I regret not telling you everything. She nodded. I can live with honesty. I can't live with ghosts. She went back to her room. I stayed awake. At 3, someone knocked again. Different rhythm. Claire stood there, barefoot, unapologetic. Before you say anything, she said, I'm not here for what you think. Then why are you here? I asked. Because Eleanor plans to confront Lydia tomorrow, she said. Vivian plans to expose your health. Marian plans to seduce you out of spite. And Susan plans to leave quietly, which will hurt you the most. I stared at her. How do you know all this? She smiled sadly. Because I listened. You taught me that. Christmas morning crept closer. And with it, consequences. Somewhere down the hall, a door creaked. The house remembered. Christmas morning arrived the way it always does, pretending innocence. Pale light slid across the snow, bells somewhere in the distance. The world dressed up like it hadn't spent the night sharpening knives. I woke before the house did. Or maybe the house was pretending to. I sat on the edge of the bed, heart thumping with that irregular confidence it had adopted lately, and wondered when exactly my life had turned into a dinner theater production of my worst decisions. The funny thing was, I didn't feel regret. I felt awake. Downstairs, the kitchen staff moved quietly, professionals who had learned long ago not to react to emotional debris. Coffee was made strong. Bacon sizzled. The smell alone could have resurrected lesser men. Eleanor arrived first, of course. Perfectly dressed, perfectly composed, carrying a leather folder like she planned to file Christmas under necessary inconveniences. Good morning, Walter, she said. We need to talk. We always do, I replied. The tragedy is timing. She ignored that. Your engagement is a mistake. Good morning to you too. She's young, Eleanor continued. She doesn't understand the gravity of your situation. My situation has a name, I said. It's called mortality. Happens to everyone eventually. She doesn't love you, Eleanor said flatly. She loves the version of you that survives. That one landed. Eleanor had always known where to aim. Before I could respond, Marian breezed in, wearing silk pajamas and mischief. Am I interrupting a coup? Only a preventative one, Eleanor said. Marianne poured herself coffee. Relax. If Walter wanted safety, he'd have married you again. Eleanor stiffened. I divorced him for a reason. So did we all, Marianne said cheerfully. Vivian entered next, phone already in hand, eyes bright with plans. Susan followed behind her, quieter than usual, already halfway gone. Then Lydia appeared. She looked radiant in a dangerous way, calm after deciding something irreversible. She smiled at everyone, too evenly. Good morning, she said. I hope you slept well. No one answered. Claire was last. Of course. She wore a sweater I'd once bought her in Vermont, back when the future had felt negotiable. She caught my eye, just briefly, and shook her head almost imperceptibly. Careful. Breakfast unfolded like a chess game played by people pretending it was checkers. Vivian brought up my health first. Not directly. She preferred elegance. Walter, she said, have you thought about long-term arrangements? You know, contingencies. I have, I said. They're called lawyers. Eleanor watched Lydia. Marian watched me. Susan watched her hands. And then Lydia did something unexpected. I know about his heart, she said calmly. That stopped everything. I also know, she continued, that some of you think I'm here for the wrong reasons. Vivian smiled. Do we? Yes, Lydia said. And you're entitled to. I didn't grow up wealthy. I learned early that money makes people suspicious and stupid in equal measure. She looked at me then. Walter didn't lie to me about his condition. He hesitated. There's a difference. Claire exhaled slowly. Relief? Or disappointment? I love him, Lydia said. Not because he's safe. Because he's complicated. And exhausting. And honest when it matters. Eleanor closed her folder. Susan stood. I think I should go, she said quietly. That one hurt. Claire had been right. Stay, I said. Please. Susan shook her head. I've loved you in silence long enough. Merry Christmas, Walter. She kissed my cheek and left. A clean wound. The worst kind. Later, I found Lydia alone in the sunroom. You didn't have to defend me, I said. I wasn't, she replied. I was clarifying. I nodded. And what have you clarified? She met my eyes. That you're still in love with her. The truth sat between us, undeniable and unmannered. Yes, I said. But loving her doesn't mean choosing her. She considered that. And choosing me? I choose you, I said. Every day I wake up. She smiled sadly. Even if it scares you? Especially then. In the hallway, Claire packed her bag. You're leaving? I said. I should have never come, she replied. But I'm glad I did. So am I. She hesitated. Take care of your heart, Walter. I'm trying, I said. In more ways than one. She left before I could say the wrong thing, or the right one. Outside, the snow kept falling. Inside, something fragile held. Christmas, it turned out, wasn't about forgiveness. It was about choosing what you're willing to lose. By noon, the house felt lighter. Not happier, lighter. Like something heavy had been removed. Only to reveal how sore everything underneath actually was. Susan's room was already empty. The staff moved through it with quiet efficiency, erasing her presence faster than my memory could. I hated that. Susan had always deserved permanence. Instead, she got a goodbye that echoed. Vivian stayed. Of course she did. She cornered me in my study while Eleanor supervised the opening of presents like a general overseeing a ceasefire. Walter, Vivian said, closing the door behind her. You're making a very emotional decision. That's usually how humans do it, I replied. She smiled, sharp and rehearsed. You're choosing instability. Lydia is untested. So was I said. Once. She stepped closer. You're vulnerable right now. People talk. People always talk, I said. You just prefer to control the conversation. Her smile flickered. I have investors who would panic if they thought I might die. I finished for her. Vivian, if my heart stops tomorrow, the markets will survive. They always do. And Lydia, she pressed. Do you really think she will? That one landed somewhere unpleasant. She's stronger than you think, I said. Vivian tilted her head. Stronger than Claire? I looked at her. Really looked. Careful, I said. That question reveals more about you than me. She stepped back, annoyed. Vivian hated losing altitude. Outside, laughter drifted in through the windows. Marianne had taken over the living room, telling a story that involved Rome, a motorcycle, and a regrettable tattoo. Eleanor pretended not to listen. Lydia laughed anyway. I watched her through the glass for a moment. Lydia was good with people. She didn't perform warmth. She inhabited it. That scared me. I'd built an empire on control, not connection. My phone buzzed. A message from Daniel. Eleanor found something. Old documents. She wants to talk. Of course she did. We met in the library. Eleanor laid the papers out neatly, like exhibits in a trial she'd already won. Your first will, she said. You never updated this section. I glanced down. Claire's name. A legacy clause I'd written years ago and then buried under new revisions, like a bad conscience under expensive suits. It's obsolete, I said. Legally, yes, Eleanor replied. Emotionally, that depends. You're enjoying this, I said. I'm preventing chaos, she said. Someone has to. Eleanor, I said quietly, I'm not afraid of chaos. I'm afraid of wasting what time I have left. She studied me then, really studied me. For a brief second, I saw the woman who once loved me before I learned how to be impressive. You always were stubborn, she said softly. And you always underestimated how much that costs, I replied. She gathered the papers. Fix it. Today. I will, I said. On my terms. In the afternoon, Lydia and I walked the grounds. Snow crunched beneath our feet. She slipped her arm through mine, naturally, without asking permission. You're quiet, she said. I'm thinking, I replied. That's dangerous, she teased. Then, more seriously, Vivian spoke to me. I stopped. About your health, your assets, your complications. I sighed. And she thinks I'm temporary, Lydia said. A pleasant distraction. And you? I asked. She looked at me, eyes steady. I think love at our ages, yours and mine, isn't about permanence. It's about courage. That was new and unsettling. Are you brave, Walter? She asked. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to be the man I'd always pretended to be. I'm learning, I said. That night, after everyone had retreated to their corners, Daniel brought me a letter. Handwritten. Claire's handwriting. I recognized it the way you recognize a scar. You didn't choose me. That's good. It means you're still capable of choosing forward. Take care of Lydia. Take care of yourself. Don't let fear masquerade as loyalty. I folded the letter carefully, not because it mattered legally, but because it mattered to the man I'd been. Later, as the house slept, I felt the familiar tightness in my chest. Not pain, warning. I sat down, breathed, waited for it to pass. It did. I laughed quietly. The sound surprised me. Love hadn't killed me. Neither had truth. Outside, the last of the snow stopped falling. Christmas was over. What came next would be harder. The days after Christmas are strange creatures. They don't belong to celebration or routine. They hover. They wait. They watch what you do once the music stops. Most of the guests left by the following afternoon. Marion hugged me like we'd just survived a minor war together. Eleanor shook my hand, formal to the end, but her eyes lingered a second longer than necessary. Vivian left without ceremony, already on the phone, narrating a future in which she was still winning. And then there were two. Lydia stayed, not because she felt obligated, and not because she was afraid to leave. She stayed because she wanted to see what I would do once there was no audience. That's a dangerous kind of love. It demands follow-through. We fell into something resembling normality. Breakfasts without speeches. Walks without subtext. Evenings where the silence wasn't trying to sell us something. For the first time in weeks, my heart behaved like an organ instead of a warning system. On the fourth day, my doctor called. I put him on speaker. Lydia sat across from me at the kitchen table, pretending not to listen while listening perfectly. The tests are back, Dr. Myers said. There's deterioration, but not at the rate we feared. That's medical for congratulations. I asked. It's medical for you're not out of the woods, but the forest isn't on fire, he replied. We should talk about surgery. Not immediately. Soon. Lydia reached for my hand. Not dramatically, just enough. After the call, neither of us spoke for a while. So, she said finally, you're staying. For now, I said. Seems I'm annoyingly resilient. She smiled. Then her face shifted, subtle, but I noticed. I always notice when reality catches up to optimism. There's something you should know, she said. Those words age you instantly. She told me about the job offer. West Coast. San Francisco. A position she'd been working toward long before she met me. The kind of opportunity people pretend not to want, but secretly rehearse accepting in the mirror. They need an answer in 2 weeks, she said. I leaned back, absorbing it. The old version of me would have calculated. How much could I give? What leverage did I have? Could I buy geography the way I'd bought inconvenience my whole life? I don't want to be the reason you don't go, I said. I don't want to be the reason you rush into surgery, she replied. There it was. The standoff of mutual decency. Exhausting. Rare. That night, I couldn't sleep. I went down to the study, poured myself a small bourbon, and stared at the wall where paintings hung like frozen decisions. Somewhere between 2 abstracts I'd overpaid for, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered because curiosity has always been my least fatal flaw. Walter, Claire's voice said. I closed my eyes. You're terrible at staying gone. I'm worse at staying quiet, she replied. I heard about Lydia. That didn't surprise me. Information traveled faster than forgiveness. She's good for you, Claire said. No bitterness. Just fact. She might leave, I said. Yes, Claire replied. So might you. We sat in that truth for a moment, miles apart. You taught me something, she continued. Love doesn't mean staying. It means not lying about why you leave. Are you calling to test me? I asked. No, she said. I'm calling to free you. She hung up before I could respond. She always did that, left first, on her own terms. It was the most loving thing she'd ever done. The next morning, I found Lydia packing a small bag. Just for a few days, she said quickly. I need to think. I nodded. So do I. At the door, she paused. If I go, she said, I want to know you didn't stay because you were afraid to be alone. I met her gaze. If you go, I said, I want to know you didn't leave because you were afraid to be chosen. She kissed me then. Soft. Uncertain. Honest. After she left, the house settled again. But this time, it didn't feel like waiting. It felt like listening. I met with my lawyers. Updated documents. Cleaned the past out of the future. Eleanor would have approved. Then I did something reckless. I booked a flight to San Francisco. Not to chase Lydia. Not to surprise her with grand gestures and expensive dinners. I went to see the city where her life might unfold without me. To imagine myself not at the center of everything. It was liberating. And terrifying. On the flight back, turbulence shook the cabin. My heart skipped. I breathed through it, steady, stubborn. I wasn't done yet. When I returned home, Lydia was waiting on the porch. She looked at me, searching. You look different. I practiced letting go, I said. Didn't like it much. She laughed, relief breaking through. I turned them down, she said. Not because of you. Because I'm not done here. I took her hands. Then let's not waste the time we're borrowing. In the distance, church bells rang late, leftover from the season. Love hadn't solved everything, but it had stopped running. And for a man with a faulty heart, that felt like a miracle. People assume that once you make a decision, peace follows. That's a comforting myth, right up there with honest politicians and harmless secrets. What actually follows is accounting. Emotional, moral, sometimes financial. Mostly emotional, which is always the most expensive kind. Lydia moved back in, but carefully. She didn't bring all her things. Just enough to signal intention, not surrender. I respected that. At my age, I'd finally learned that love isn't about possession. It's about consent renewed daily. We settled into a rhythm that would have bored my younger self senseless. Morning coffee together. Afternoon work apart. Evenings that didn't require witnesses. I kept my appointments. Took my medication. Ate less red meat and more humility. Then Eleanor called. I assume you've done something reckless, she said without greeting. I flew commercial, I replied. Does that count? She sighed. Your son is coming. That stopped me. My son, Michael Callahan, and I had mastered the art of polite distance years ago. He lived on the West Coast, built his own respectable fortune, married well, divorced quietly. We spoke on birthdays, sometimes on holidays, never about feelings. Men in our family treated emotions like suspicious packages. When I asked, tonight, Eleanor said. He called me first. That should tell you something. It did. It told me he expected resistance. Michael arrived just after sunset. He looked like me in the way mirrors lie. Same height, same jaw, fewer regrets visible on the surface. Lydia greeted him warmly. He returned it cautiously. Dad, he said. You look good. Low bar, I replied. Sit. Dinner was civil. Too civil. Michael asked about my health in the abstract, like a man discussing weather patterns. Lydia asked about his work. He answered politely, withholding texture. Finally, he put his fork down. I heard about the will. There it was. I imagine you did, I said. Word travels. I'm not here to argue, he said quickly. I'm here to understand. Lydia excused herself without being asked. Another thing I admired. I'm giving most of it away, I said. Foundations. Research. A few causes that annoyed me enough to fund. And Lydia, he asked. She'll be comfortable, I said. Not powerful. He nodded slowly. Good. That surprised me. You don't disapprove? I asked. I disapprove of secrets, he said. Not choices. I leaned back, studying the man I hadn't fully known. You think I'm making a mistake? I think, he said carefully, you're finally making one for the right reasons. We sat with that. Later that night, my heart reminded me of its presence. Stronger this time. Sharper. Lydia found me sitting down, breathing through it, stubborn as ever. I'm calling the doctor, she said. I know, I replied. I'm not arguing. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and inevitability. Tests. Scans. Serious faces. Dr. Myers didn't sugarcoat it this time. Surgery, he said. Soon. Not optional. Lydia held my hand. Michael stood at the foot of the bed, silent. That night, alone in the room, I did something I hadn't done in years. I prayed. Not for survival. For clarity. Surgery came 3 days later. Bright lights. Calm voices. The strange intimacy of strangers holding your life while you drift off. When I woke, everything hurt, which meant I was alive. Recovery was slow. Humbling. Lydia read to me. Michael visited every day. Eleanor called with updates disguised as advice. Marion sent flowers and an inappropriate card. Vivian sent nothing, which felt on brand. One afternoon, as snow began to fall again, Lydia sat beside me, quiet. Whatever happens next, she said, I need to know you won't disappear into safety. I smiled weakly. I don't think I'm built for safe. She took my hand. Good. When I was discharged, the house welcomed me back like an old conspirator. I moved slower now. Thought more. Listened better. One evening, while sorting papers I no longer pretended to enjoy, I found Claire's letter again. I reread it without flinching this time. I understood it now. Love doesn't always stay, but it leaves instructions. Outside, Christmas lights still hung, forgotten but glowing. Lydia leaned her head on my shoulder. For the first time in a long while, the future didn't feel like a threat. It felt earned. And I suspected the final lesson was still coming. Recovery changes your sense of time. Days stop lining up like obedient soldiers and start behaving more like jazz. Improvised, unpredictable, occasionally brilliant, occasionally painful. I wasn't allowed to drive. I wasn't allowed to lift anything heavier than a book. I wasn't allowed, according to Lydia, to pretend I was invincible ever again. That last restriction was the hardest. The house adapted faster than I did. Handrails appeared where there had once been arrogance. Chairs multiplied. Even the staff spoke to me differently, not softly, but attentively, as if I might finally say something worth hearing. Michael stayed longer than planned. We fell into an awkward but genuine routine. Morning coffee, afternoon walks when the weather allowed, evenings where conversation drifted dangerously close to honesty. One night, as we sat by the fire, he broke. I was angry when Mom died, he said suddenly. I didn't interrupt. I'd learned that lesson the hard way. I was angry at you, he continued. Because you survived. Because you kept living. Because you loved other women. I nodded. I didn't do grief very well. No, he said. You did it expensively. I smiled despite myself. She would have liked Lydia, he said after a pause. That's what scares me. Why? I asked. Because it makes this real. It already was. He just hadn't caught up yet. A week later, Eleanor arrived unannounced. She carried no folders this time. Just herself. That alone told me something had shifted. I've retired, she said, sitting across from me. That's illegal, I replied. You're constitutionally incapable of rest. She almost smiled. I want you to hear this clearly, she said. I don't regret leaving you, but I regret not forgiving you sooner. That landed softly. The kind of truth that doesn't bruise. Thank you, I said. She stood, hesitated, then leaned down and kissed my forehead, something she hadn't done in decades. After she left, Lydia found me staring at nothing. You okay? She asked. I think, I said. I'm finally catching up to my own life. She sat beside me. Good. I was getting tired of waiting. It was on a quiet afternoon, weeks later, that the past made its final appearance. A letter arrived. Real paper. No return address. I recognized the handwriting before I opened it. Claire, I'm moving. Far. Somewhere warm where people don't ask questions they don't want answered. I wanted to tell you before it became a rumor. I folded the letter once. Carefully. Lydia watched me. Didn't ask. Didn't demand reassurance. She'd learned me too well. She's closing the door, Lydia said. Yes, I replied. Properly this time. Does it hurt? She asked. I considered it. Honestly. No, I said. It clarifies. That night, I dreamed of nothing. No memories. No regrets. Just darkness and rest. It was the best sleep I'd had in years. Spring arrived quietly. Snow retreated. Buds appeared on trees that had looked dead long enough to fool everyone. My strength returned slowly. My heart behaved. I started writing again, not memos or contracts, but thoughts, observations, things I learned too late, but still wanted to keep. Lydia read some of it, mocked the dramatic parts, praised the honest ones. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the light fade, she said, I don't need a wedding. I looked at her. I wasn't planning a circus. She smiled. I need a promise. And not the forever kind. The real one. I nodded. Presence. Truth. No disappearing. She leaned her head against my shoulder. That'll do. I thought about all the women who had passed through my life. All the versions of myself they'd known. The boy who chased. The man who conquered. The older fool who hid behind wealth and wit. This version felt quieter. Less impressive. More accurate. Somewhere inside me, a clock ticked steadily. Not threatening. Just counting. I wasn't afraid of it anymore. Christmas would come again. And after that, something else. Always something else. But for now, in the honest light of an earned calm, I knew this much. Love hadn't saved me. It had taught me how to stay.
Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and stay with us for more.